Well, there's no point in bearing the lead here. I guess I might as well just tick some of you off now. At least this way I can save you some time. You can go find another video that will say only the things that you like to hear. Here we go. There is no silver shortage. We're not running out of silver. Silver not becoming unobtainium. In our lifetimes, we will never experience a shortage of silver, period. How can I say this with tremendous confidence? Markets always work, and I have the receipts and the data to prove it. What is good, Stackers University? Thank you for joining me. And while I have some bad news about future silver demand, I promise you, it's not as bad as it seems if you understand the real reasons why you should own silver. In the world of investing, one thing can be for certain. The cure for high prices is high prices. The same can be said about low prices. Why? Because these extreme levels in price have a dramatic impact on one of the most important determinants of price, good old-fashioned supply and demand. This is always how markets eventually balance themselves out. For example, at $20 a pound, the case for uranium was, as Rick Rule said, either the price had to go up or the lights were going to go out. In addition, this low price of $20 per pound was not high enough to keep companies in business or encourage new production to come online. But as the price rose, a shift started to happen. This is the same shift we're starting to see in the silver market. For many producers and developers, the shift from $20 to $30 silver makes a tremendous difference in their profitability. All of a sudden, $30 silver makes a large number of barely feasible projects profitable. It all comes back to low prices dampening production. When prices increase, though, industry responds with greater supply, and once supply and demand are in balance, the price settles down. This is where most stackers get it wrong. They believe the industrial use and demand is why silver will go to the moon, as they say. And actually, if it did go to the moon, I doubt that it will remain in orbit up there. It will simply come back crashing down just like it always has. This doesn't make silver a bad investment. I don't believe silver is a bad investment at all. As a matter of fact, I just added another 175 ounces when silver was just under $2,800 last week. What makes silver a potentially bad investment is when you don't understand how the investment works. With more than 50% of its usage being industrial, silver will never compete with gold because of this industrial supply and demand dynamic. What has always confused me is how the hypers tout all the industrial uses of silver, but never make the connection that the industrial uses actually de-emphasizes the silver's monetary role. As Lobo Tigre has pointed out, this is why over the last few years we've seen silver track copper much more closely than it actually tracks gold. When people ask how can gold be making all-time highs while silver is only at 60% of its all-time high, the answer seems really clear to me. Industrial demand. Regardless, whenever the hypers or promoters make their case for silver, what do you always hear? All the ways silver is used in industry, that solar and EV demand are going to suck up all the supply, that we're going to run out of silver because demand exceeds annual production and blah, blah, blah. As I've learned throughout my life, your greatest strength can be one of your greatest weaknesses. In this case, the strength is part of silver's biggest problem. You see, the beauty of the industry and free markets is that they work. And as I've shared, the cure for high prices is high prices. About 17% of annual supply comes from silver recycling, and that is nothing in comparison to mining production. Well, what would happen if I told you that we could recover at least 90% of the silver used in solar panels and 99% from its photovoltaic uses? Would you still be bullish on silver? What if I told you that almost half of EV users and owners want to go back to gas vehicles? Or that the amount of silver in solar panels will decrease, or there will be some metal substitution that's going to reduce the amount of silver being used? Well, just as high prices will encourage new mining production, higher prices also encourage increased recycling. The reality is, at $20 silver, it's not very profitable or worth the time and effort to recycle silver. But at $50 an ounce, it just might be. This leads us to what sparked this video. Just a week ago, TheCool.com posted an article highlighting a couple startups that have developed methods to recycle 90% of silver and 99% of copper from solar panels without releasing any harmful byproducts. Don't ask me how, because I'm not sure I care. What I care about is what this does to the supply and demand for silver. As they report, while the price is more expensive than just recycling, the amount of materials recycled can offset those costs and can be used to construct new solar panel systems. The article also mentions that a company in China has discovered a safe salt molten method to save up to 99% of solar panels' precious metals, while another plant in Tennessee is working to recycle over 125,000 modules a year. As one company officer said, a photovoltaic panel at the end of its life still has a lot to give. It can be considered a small mine of precious elements. I'm not going to wave my hands and say this is a game changer. At the same time, If you take another look at the Silver Institute's data and focus on the market balance, which is what everyone gets all excited about, you can see that the so-called deficits, and I'll have to explain why I call it so-called deficits in a different video, but these deficits could be easily erased by a 20 to 50% increase in recycling. So what happens to the supply and demand imbalance when 90% of silver can be recovered from solar panels alone? As you can see from this chart, that means close to 100 million ounces of silver could come back as supply just from solar panels. That doesn't include automotive or photovoltaic recycling, which will grow based on higher prices and better extractive technology. To make things worse, even back in 2016, the Silver Institute projected that a significant reduction in silver. Here's the point, folks. The gaslighting hyping is what drives me nuts. Silver is silver. It's been money forever, and it doesn't require a hard sell or have to have its role in industry misrepresented for it to have value or increase in value. An ounce is an ounce, 5,000 years ago as it is today. It has never changed, and it doesn't need to because the real value always remains the same. The only change is how many paper dollars you can get for it. So you buy silver for what it is: real money, insurance, a hedge, and a store of value. Anything beyond that is icing on the cake. If you focus on the right reasons for buying silver, you'll be more than happy with its performance. Focusing on anything else will have you, like we say in my church, disillusioned, difficult, and hard to get along with. In the comments section, what do you think is a bigger driver of silver price? Monetary factors or industrial demand? Do you think there will ever be a shortage of silver? Or simply put an A+ in the comments section so everyone knows that you always stack smarter and never stop learning. Okay, folks, that brings us to the end of the educational portion of the video. Next, I want to share some information about the sponsor of today's video, Alaska Energy Metals, US stock ticker AKEMF. I'm actually a little giddy that I get to discuss this company for a number of reasons. Alaska Energy is an exploration company developing a potentially very large nickel project in the interior of Alaska. And when I say potentially large scale, I mean they already have 8 billion pounds of nickel. We've all heard lots of discussions about the world's need for more of the critical metals if we're going to meet our energy needs going forward. This is especially important as our relationship with China and Russia continue to deteriorate. In fact, as you can see here, the US Department of Energy has labeled nickel as a critical metal. One of the key aspects that makes Alaska Energy Metals so interesting is the fact that the US only has one active nickel mine, which is a low-grade mine. While nickel is relatively common and plentiful as a metal, the reason why there is a shortage comes down to how difficult it is to recover from the earth. So let me tell you the other reasons why I started buying 2 nickel miners over the last month or so. In particular, Alaska Energy Metals. As a disclaimer, this is not a recommendation, as your risk tolerance, timeline, temperament may not be the same as mine, so don't go out buying this stock because I own it. First, I'm going to let you in on a little secret shared with me back in January when I had the opportunity to interview Lior Gantz. One part of the interview that didn't make it into the final video was our discussion about nickel being an interesting investment area to Lior. As I did more research, I really began to understand his bull argument for nickel along with a few other base metals. Thankfully, I was able to be patient because these types of industrial metals take a price beating when we start to realize that we're actually headed into a recession or a slowdown. Just look what has happened to the price of copper and oil over the last few months. Over the last month or so, I've been slowly buying shares, fully understand that I'm probably a little bit too early, but I don't care about that because my temperament and timeline are in my favor. At the same time, Alaska Energy Metals just keeps getting cheaper and juicier of an opportunity as it's a solid company with pounds in the ground and a little bit of money in their coffers. It's been beaten down so much that it's almost an asymmetrical bet. I first learned about Alaska Energy Metals last year, right around time they were doing an offering for accredited investors. And let me tell you, my patience has been rewarded. Before we get into that, let me just share my personal reasons for owning the stock. 1, the project is in the United States. 2, while I don't love fixer-uppers, I do love when a previous company mismanages a project and another company goes in and buys the assets for pennies on dollar. Kind of like what Red Lake Mines is doing. With Alaska Energy Miles, the previous owner already spent $30 million on drilling data before they ran into trouble. And that's when Greg Beecher, CEO of Alaska Energy Metals, was able to swoop in and buy the property for $1.4 million, which was a 95% discount. Absolutely insane. While drilling needs to continue, they already know there's something significant in the ground, specifically the 8 billion pounds of nickel I already mentioned. 4, what makes them even more attractive is who snuggled up right next to their property. Remember those billionaires, Gates, Bezos, Branson, Dalio, and others? And they got together and formed a company, and they used AI to help them find the ideal or optimal location for a nickel project. Yep, those are the ones who bought the property right next door to Alaska Energy Metals. I just can't think that's a coincidence. Currently, the market cap is around $20 million, which is cheap compared to other companies with similar or less reserves. And finally, number 6 for me, when I mentioned how the stock price has been beaten down, well, the first round of private placement to accredited investors was around 50 cents Canadian. And that's when I first heard about them. And this is what makes my tummy tickle. Then there were another offering at 40 cents, then another offering at 28 cents, and just recently a 15-cent offering. Meanwhile, I started to buy the shares right around 16 cents just a month ago. Now, I may not have gotten any options or warrants with my purchase. Regardless, I love that I am in this for less money than most of the other accredited investors were that bought in early. Like I said, I think the upside far exceeds the potential downside. This is a company with 8 billion pounds of nickel in a world where 29 kilograms of nickel goes into an EV battery, a metal that the Department of Energy classifies as a critical metal, coming from a tier 1 jurisdiction with a strong financial backing that is trading near its 52-week low after completing multiple capital raises at significantly higher prices. The way I see it, the 8 billion ounces has to be worth at least 20 cents a share, especially when you consider this chart of its peers and their evaluation for what they have in the ground. For me, this was something that I had to be a part of, but you need to go and do your due diligence before you give this another thought. You can start the process by going to www.alaskaenergymetals.com. Thank you to Alaska Energy Metals for sponsoring this video. Please check them out again at www.alaskaenergymetals.com or look them up by their OTC stock ticker, AKEMF.